We've had a couple of updates in the Justin Baldoni versus Blake Lively case today, but that does not yet include the second amended complaint, which people are expecting them to file. Today is the deadline by 11:59 p.m., so we'll keep an eye out and see if anything happens there. Today was also Blake Lively's scheduled deposition, though no word on whether or not she showed up just yet. As you can see, I'm not at home. Again, I'm going to be traveling a lot this week, and I'm actually going to be out of town all next week too, but now I'm going to be, just all around Florida, so not quite so far away from home. Still going to do my best to keep up with everything while I'm gone. Right now, we're going to go over this motion that was just filed by Sloane and Vision PR. They're the PR representatives for Blake Lively, and they're filing to have the Wayfarer parties pay their attorney's fees and costs, saying that they had filed a meritless lawsuit against them. And remember, the claims against Sloane and Vision PR were thrown out by the judge on June 9th with prejudice. So we're going to run through some of that here, but just really quickly, I'm going to be putting out some shorter form videos and updates on all of this on my Instagram account. If you want to go find me and follow me here, I'll show it on the screen real quick. I put all kinds of stuff on here. Here's a video from when I was visiting Omar. I'm going to leave the sound off on that so I don't get a copyright. All right, so we're going to go through this memorandum a little bit, and then we'll go over Leslie Sloan's statement. The Wayfarer party's claims against the Sloan parties were an ill-advised publicity stunt that has no basis in law or fact. After suffering months of financially crippling and emotionally devastating litigation, the Sloan parties have now been fully vindicated. The court dismissed the claims against them with prejudice and held, on no uncertain terms, that Sloan did not commit a tort. In addition to the gaping legal deficiencies in the Wayfarer party's pleadings, discovery has confirmed that their factual allegations against Sloan were complete fabrications. And I think that's going to come back to those messages from James Vitushka, but let's keep reading. After the Wayfarer parties for months wrongfully refused in discovery to identify their sources or produce anything to support their allegations, discovery from third parties proved that their main allegation against Ms. Sloan, which the Wayfarer parties repeated and sensationalized throughout their court filings, was utterly false. Okay, so yes, it's the Daily Mail reporter James Vitushka. On June 4th, reporter Vitushka confirmed, contrary to the Wayfarer party's key allegation that Ms. Sloan told him that Blake was sexually assaulted, that Ms. Sloan never told Vitushka that Ms. Lively was sexually harassed or sexually assaulted by Justin Baldoni or anyone else. Vitushka also confirmed that the Wayfarer parties did not conduct even a cursory investigation into their claims before recklessly dragging Ms. Sloan into this litigation and the surrounding media firestorm that they fueled. By the Wayfarer party's own admission, any claim that Lively was sexually assaulted in the way their complaints implied is an unsubstantiated accusation that not even Lively had gone so far as to claim. It is simply unbelievable that any Wayfarer party or any counsel that drafted that allegation or signed those pleadings before filing believed in good faith that Ms. Sloan indeed made such an accusation. I don't know if I would say unbelievable. I think that's going a little far, but it did seem like they were lacking a little bit in their case against her. Not to say she didn't do anything wrong. It's just, how do you prove it? That's really how I feel about a lot of this in general. I feel like there wasn't necessarily no wrongdoing. It's just you have to be able to lay out your case and you have to be able to eventually prove that. And I don't know if they were going to be able to do that with Leslie. Given that the Wayfarer party's claims were utterly baseless, it is clear they were filed for an ulterior purpose, to distract from their own misconduct and silence Ms. Sloan's communications with the press concerning Blake Lively's credible claims of sexual harassment and retaliation by subjecting Ms. Sloan to costly litigation and attempting to ruin her reputation through false and defamatory accusations masked as legitimate court filings. And I still think it's hilarious anytime anyone on this side of things talks about masking things as legitimate court filings. Because all of this started from a fake lawsuit. They literally pretended to not know who they were suing to get documents that they knew they might not be able to get otherwise. Also, I just want to say here, Blake Lively's credible claims of sexual harassment and retaliation, that's a no. But whether or not Leslie Sloan did what she was accused of does not make Blake Lively's claims of sexual harassment and retaliation credible at all. The Sloan parties respectfully submit that New York's anti-SLAPP statute applies and is satisfied here, and accordingly request that the court hold the Sloan parties are entitled to recover the reasonable attorney's fees and costs that they incurred defending against the Wayfarer party's baseless claims. In the alternative, the Sloan parties respectfully request that the court award them their reasonable attorney's fees and costs pursuant to the court's inherent powers. And I'm not going to read a lot of this background here because we know everything that happened, and also they're going to say some really annoying, infuriating stuff that isn't even true, in my opinion. For example, the first fucking paragraph here. On January 16th, the Wayfarer parties sued the Sloan parties in a misguided attempt to salvage Justin Baldoni's reputation after it was exposed that he is a sexual harasser who deliberately retaliated against his victim, Blake Lively. In fact, after Miss Lively bravely spoke out against Baldoni's sexual misconduct, Baldoni went so far as to hire a crisis PR manager to bury Miss Lively and destroy her life. Okay. Who hired the ex-CIA for crisis PR? Who lied about what happened and then looked like a bitch when the video came out? I'm actually just not interested in giving any more weight to this because what they're saying is absolutely not true, has not been proven in any way whatsoever, and I do not believe it. And to continue to push this narrative that Justin Baldoni is a sexual harasser is pretty sick. I would argue that the issues with James Vituska here are actually the only thing relevant in this entire background. And it was James Vituska, not the Wayfarer parties, who said that Leslie Sloan said Blake was sexually assaulted. The Wayfarer parties knew, or at a minimum should have known, that sexually assaulted was Vituska's own characterizations of details included in Lively's administrative complaint, and not any words Miss Sloan ever uttered. Even taken as true, however, the Wayfarer parties' claims were fundamentally defective. They failed to plead the essential elements of any claim asserted, and failed to comply with the basic requirement of identifying or describing the statements they allege are defamatory. Making things worse, the Wayfarer parties' pleading was littered with irrelevant and unfounded allegations meant solely to inflame the public and severely harm Miss Sloan's business. Well, imagine putting out unfounded allegations solely to inflame or harm someone. Kind of seems like you've been doing that for a living. For example, the Wayfarer party recklessly alleged that Vision PR was once backed by Harvey Weinstein, which was, at best, deliberately misleading. The Sloan parties have never represented Weinstein, and the stories that the Wayfarer parties have apparently planted, claiming that Miss Sloan worked with Weinstein to silence victims, are utterly baseless. I don't know if they're all that baseless, but to be honest, I haven't really done that much research into that, so I'm not gonna say too much about that. I will say I don't believe that her hands are clean there at all. Being wrongfully dragged into this litigation caused the Sloan parties serious reputational and economic injuries and caused Miss Sloan severe emotional distress. More emotional distress from the parties that couldn't care less about hurt feelings. The Wayfarer parties caused the Sloan parties to incur substantial attorney's fees and costs, all while knowing their claims lack a basis in law or fact. Once it became clear to the Wayfarer parties that they had no basis for that contention, they began to argue only that Miss Sloan seeded stories to the effect that Baldoni is a sexual predator who sexually assaulted Lively. Strikingly, during a meet and confer, the Wayfarer parties' counsel refused to even confirm whether they were still alleging Miss Sloan ever said the words sexual predator or sexual assault in reference to Baldoni, nor would they offer any other clarification as to what the Sloan party's allegedly defamatory statements were. Here she's talking about Sarah Nathan, who works for the New York Post. She's also Melissa Nathan's sister, Melissa Nathan, who runs the agency group, TAG. As to Sarah Nathan, who is Melissa Nathan's sister, the communications confirmed that Sarah Nathan told Miss Sloan about the sexual harassment allegations, not the other way around. On August 8th, Sarah Nathan texted Miss Sloan saying she heard about 3 things that Baldoni did on set that were, in her words, all a bit creepy. Well, I would argue that those 3 things are being relayed by someone who called a still image of a home birth porn. And if you want to talk about what's a little bit creepy, I would say telling a man you're going to tattoo his name on your perineum. Does that have anything to do with the legal document we're reading right now? No, but I'm still mad about it. I'm not really going to go over the legal standard stuff because you guys know I'm not a lawyer. I'm not the best person to relay that to you. So now I just do it off camera. The Sloan parties estimate they will seek approximately $1.3 million in attorney's fees and approximately $38,000 in costs. This is Leslie Sloan's declaration. The first time I discussed Miss Lively's sexual harassment allegations with a journalist was when Melissa Nathan's sister, Sarah Nathan, texted me on August 8th. Then on August 11th, Sarah Nathan forwarded me an anonymous tip that Page 6 had received, which said, among other things, that Justin Baldoni made Miss Lively uncomfortable on set. Who sent the tip? I know you're not going to tell me that, but who sent the tip? Come on. I'm a little sus. Contrary to the Wayfarer party's allegations, I never told James Vituska that Miss Lively was sexually assaulted by Justin Baldoni or anyone else. All right, that's all we got for now. Like I said, I'll keep an eye out for that amended complaint. I guess they could just not even file one, but they did say they intended to the best of my recollection, so I'll keep waiting for that.